lovely way to start.
All right.
So, hey everybody, welcome back to another Captain Meets on Andertons TV. My guest really needs no introduction, but Robben Ford is back in the house.
Thank you.
It's been, I think, 2 or 3 years since we saw you last.
At least.
And if I remember rightly, you had either just moved or were moving to Nashville when I saw you last time.
Okay.
So how is life? You settled in? Unpacked all the boxes now?
Yes, actually. Kind of just recently, even though I've been there for a year and a half. I moved in September 2017.
Right.
And I was on the road actually quite a bit right after getting there. So it took a while to settle down. And this is, I feel like almost this cycle right now, I'm going to be in Europe for about 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And boom, now I'm in. I mean, a lot of great things have been going on already. I've played there quite a bit in different ways. Gotten to know a lot of great people, a lot of great musicians, and it's been a blast.
I should say, I mean, obviously the Purple House album came out towards the end of, or sort of fall last year, wasn't it? And
yeah, October, I think.
I don't know if I'm hearing, I mean, this is what I want to sort of talk about really, how much of a Nashville influence, not Nashville as in the old country sense of it, but just like the scene has influenced it. Because I started listening to that album probably in, not, you know, maybe April sometime this year. So I was a bit late to the party, but I was just like, this is a whole new level of just the singing and the songs and the guitar playing. It's just,
Yeah.
you know, and I love the variety. So how much do you think that what's the vibe at Nashville? What does Nashville do to musicians that somehow seems to suck the best out of them?
Well, I mean, I have to say that the reason that record turned out the way it did, I don't think it really had anything to do with Nashville.
Okay.
I mean, I recorded it in Nashville, and the musicians are all from Nashville. At least they all live there. Nobody's from Nashville, you know. It's sort of like New York City now or something. You know? It's like nobody's from New York, you know. So people from all over the place. So I don't know if I should talk about the record first or Nashville first. What do you think?
Well, I mean, definitely the record's what I want to talk about most.
Good.
But if but by all means, as I said, I'm, you know, Nashville seems to me everybody I meet now is either moved to or moving to Nashville.
And they damn well should. I mean, there's no place else like it, you know, on planet Earth, where as far as music is concerned, there isn't any place like it in terms of certainly the magnetic quality these days, you know. Yeah. And the reason is people can work, and the resources are just endless.
Yeah.
That is kind of the most astonishing thing to me about the place. You know, of course, studios, but, you know, if I need a bass player, like this happened to me fairly recently. As I say, I've been there a while, but I've been on the road a lot of that.
Yeah.
So my bass player bailed for a show the day before the show. And I'm like, I need to get a bass player.
Yeah.
And so I texted a bassist friend of mine who couldn't do it. I said, you know any bass players? And he texted back a list of like 7 people that he would recommend.
Amazing.
You know what I mean? So I'm like, I mean, just like that, I had a bass player.
It's like the telephone directory in Nashville is just separated into, like, you know, guitar players, bass players.
Yeah, and it's a string like that. So, and they're super professional people. You know, they're going to get down and learn your music. They're going to write their own charts.
Yeah.
They're going to show up ready. So it's really just been amazing from that point of view. And that was, you know, a major factor for going.
Yeah.
And
you even come
the
across
major factor.
You come across as just animated or reanimated about the scene there as well. It's I'd love to spend some more time out there because it does seem to have this effect on people. But
Yeah, there's nothing like knowing you're in exactly the right place at exactly the right time.
Yeah.
There's just nothing that can replace that.
Yeah.
There's no question. And honestly, throughout my career, personally, it's always like, is this the right place for me to be? Do I really want to be here?
Yeah.
And so consequently, basically, I've been on the road for 30 years. So the scene changes every day.
Yeah.
So when I would, I've lived in a small town called Ojai, California for the last 23 until I moved to Nashville. And that was exactly the right place to be living.
Yeah.
Because I was on the road, anywhere from a third to half the year,
Yeah.
So it was restful.
Yeah. Well, so Purple House, you've got, a pretty illustrious career of doing your own music and some real standout albums over the time. It felt to me like, I think Purple House is definitely going to be remembered as one of the best ones, because it's just...
Thank you. Yeah.
It's really interesting. I mean, first of all, the album is quite eclectic in the sense of it goes from... what's the third one on the Empty-Handed?
Empty-Handed.
Oh, man. So it goes from like super haunting, atmospheric, acousticy kind of things through to some straight up rock and rolly kind of stuff. Bound for Glory's got this most... it's going to go down as like... It's just got like a Robben Ford kind of chord or lick change in there. It's just like... It's just one of the best. So again, I just sort of... What was it, over the year or so before, while it was in the writing, what was happening to you to sort of think all these songs are coming out and the...
Well, again, right place, right time. I like where I'm living. I'm free. I feel very free there. I write on my living room couch. I've been writing on my living room couch for 20 years probably. I'm just really comfortable there.
Same couch?
Is it new couch?
Oh,
now.
okay.
It was the same couch. Now it's a new couch. But it's just a comfort zone for me, and all I need is a guitar and something to write out whatever lyrics I come up with. And generally, I go ahead and use a computer now. I used to use paper and pen very deliberately. It took me a long time to get around to typing, but it's okay at this point, So, a good deal of the record was written on the acoustic guitar. I have a beautiful Gibson J45, 1959. Oh. It's just a great instrument, man. It just, the sound comes out of it, and it just makes you want to play it.
Yeah.
So, Empty-Handed was written on that. Excuse me. A bunch of the record was written on that. There are 6 songs that were written over about a 2-month period of time. The song Bound for Glory, that's actually about 3 years old.
Really?
And I had never recorded it myself, I kind of didn't write it for myself.
Okay.
I kind of wrote it for some other purpose,
I
kind of felt it was for somebody else, and yet that turned out to be just like kind of one of the primo songs on the record.
It's 30 seconds in. The lick does that kind of... It's just got that kind of key. Are you going to play it? Because it's just...
Yeah,
that's
thing,
it.
Right? I dug using the double stops.
Yeah.
And especially with an overdriven sound.
Yeah.
I just love that sound.
Yeah. I love the note it ends on. It's the sort of... It's just one of those notes that it's not necessarily where you thought it was going to go, but when it gets there, you just go, that's the perfect note to end that. I said that's my favorite track on the album.
One of mine.
Yeah, it's a great track. But sorry, you were saying some of the other ones that.
Well, yeah, there's a song called "Bound for Glory" that I did not write, written by a friend of mine named Kyle Swan, and it seems like there's 9 songs on the record. The song "Wild Honey."
Yes.
Yeah, that had been sitting for about a year and a half, I don't think I'd recorded it in a while.
How do they sit? They sit in a relatively completed form, or just as like a lick? Or
both of those songs were fully written.
Right.
You know, and I actually demoed Wild Honey myself alone.
Right.
You know, like I did a little drum thingy. You know, I played bass, guitars, acoustic guitar. You know, sang it, and we wound up using it and adding drums to it. You know, so it became, you know, a little bit structured. You know, I replaced the bass part. You know, as an overdub. So, you know, in regards to why that record feels and sounds the way it does, is because I decided, really for the first time, to really use the studio. Mm-hmm. We took about 4 months to make that record, not recording necessarily even, but in the mixing process, you know, overdubs, replacing overdubs, re-singing, you know, like it really, you know, I wanted to use the studio. And the big influence, I have to say, admit, but inspiration to make a record like this, honestly, was Blake Mills' production of the Sound and Color record by Alabama Shakes. Have you heard that?
I don't think I have. I know of about Alabama Shakes, but I don't think I've heard that record.
That is the best record that's been made in years, just period.
Right.
In my opinion. And
she'll definitely be going to listen to that.
Well, I hope so. I mean, obviously, Brittany is she's a force of nature as a singer. Mm-hmm. But Blake Mills' production, you know, like the combination of those two people, you know, I mean, the band is okay. Mm-hmm. You know, I like the guitar player, and people tell me that the bass player is really good. You know, I just don't know, honestly. But again, it's Blake's production that puts that record on a level that I think is superior to anything that I've heard in terms of combining soul, sounds, originality, incredible creativity in that record, and it's Blake. Are you hip to Blake Mills? Yeah,
well, mainly I think from the stuff that you've written about him on the sort of the bio on the site, and just sort of thinking, yeah, I need to check this guy out. But I mean, how much of that? Because you mentioned, you know, really wanting to get back to the studio. Had you done, you know, had historically you sort of perhaps taken the approach of maybe more people working remotely, or it's less of a band vibe in the studio?
In the past?
Yeah, I'm just wondering.
Oh, no.
So it's always live. Always just in the studio, live band, hit record.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a real...
This record as well.
Yeah.
But in the past, I wanted instruments to sound good right now. You know, there's your sound. We like the sound. It's great. You put some mics on it, you record it, and you leave it alone, you know?
Yeah.
Drums, same. All the instruments. And I always liked traditional sounds. You know, I want it to sound like itself. And we started recording this record, man. And I was recording in a studio, which was actually a Purple House, hence the name.
Hence the name, yeah.
And my co-producer on the record, Casey Wasner, it's his house.
Right.
He basically turned it into a studio and did an amazing job. And we brought in another engineer to sit behind the console while we worked, and he helped a lot in the mixing process with sounds and things. So I, you know, am pretty well known for the Dumble Overdrive Special Amplifier, right?
Yeah.
And I've been using that Telly, my 60 Telly, and basically some version of a Les Paul for years also, you know? And no matter what, I couldn't get a good sound.
For this album you're talking about? Yeah.
I mean, we're recording tracks, and it's just like, this isn't working. This doesn't fit. I mean, we had 4 friggin' 50s Les Pauls there, and it was like, no, you know? So I wound up cutting the record with 2 small amps, 2 small Fender amps. I used a Pro Reverb that I borrowed for the rhythm tracks, and the guitar on, I think, all the electric guitars that were rhythm parts, I played a Les Paul Jr.
That's a great guitar, though. But into the Pro Reverb.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's again, everyone will know. I mean, you probably have the most famous guitar amp on the planet. Certainly one of them. And it's interesting, isn't it, about how sometimes just gear just doesn't fit, and then different.
That was the first time in my life.
Yeah. How did you feel about it? I mean, is your
Freaked
amp
me
like
out.
a comfort blanket? You know, it's just like been everywhere with you.
Well, I mean, like, I know that this is the best amplifier on planet Earth, and I know that this Telecaster is the best Telecaster on planet Earth. I know that, you know. That's how I feel, certainly, but I actually do know that. So I'm like, Casey, my co-producer, I'm like, Casey, what's happening, man? What is up, you know? And it had to do with the space. And, you know, the way that he worked in his studio, everything was done without room sounds.
Okay.
You weren't relying on room sounds. So you'd record something, and if you wanted it to sound airy, you know, you did that through using tools.
Some effects or some, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the record is really processed,
Yeah.
but it doesn't really sound all that processed. It doesn't feel processed.
No, it just sounds produced differently rather than processed. I completely agree with you. There's definitely something, as I said, you know, you're listening to the album, and I think there's a subconscious. It's just very easy to listen to. You know, everything feels like it's in the right space and the right kind of tone. And
right on.
yeah, I said I really liked it. Even there's a again, I don't know what tools you were using on the vocal side of things, but it's a fuller sounding vocal. You obviously definitely clicked with Casey and Blake and the environment. It's definitely brought out, you know, some great tunes and great performances.
Yeah, it became a whole, well, I should say a much more open process for me. You know, it was like, don't be conceptual.
Okay.
And discover the record.
So almost let the tunes take you where the tune's going to go, rather than being too
not only the tunes but the tools.
Yeah.
You know, everything that we, you know, it's like everything that we had at our fingertips. The direct sounds on everything, I wasn't crazy about any of them.
So it's almost like making like all your ingredients. You don't really like the flavor of any of the ingredients, but somehow or other you put them all together and you make a great.
Well, we made them sound good.
Right.
You know, I mean, it sounded good. Like, you know, the Les Paul Jr. through the Pro Reverb sounded great, but it was dry, you know.
Right. And I'm just trying to think, Pro Reverb, that's a pretty low power, relatively small. So have you got this thing cranked or...
you know, like, kinda.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't afraid to turn it up. And, you know, those amplifiers are going to be a little distorted just naturally. And again, I'm used to this super clean thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, I was adjusting through the whole process of making that record. And I learned so much about recording, you know?
Yeah.
Which I'm so happy about, because producing records is really what I want to do now, you know?
Yeah.
Produce, not, you know, necessarily make.
Yeah.
And so it was just a great learning experience. First time in my life, man, that I did not use. I mean, everything I've ever done was that Dumble Overdrive Special. You know?
It's quite a leap of faith, that, as well. It's almost.
Oh, I was terrified.
Yeah, it's almost like I always used to think about the old, you know, the composers from hundreds of years ago, where somehow or other they could hear what all the parts were going to be layered on top of each other, and they could hear that. And I guess that's what a good producer can kind of.
Well,
he's got that vision, or he or she's got that vision of, look, it is all going to come together. Don't worry, you know.
Well, I mean, I think great producers have a lot of experience.
Yeah.
So, you know, you kind of know what that's going to sound like. You know how to work with a dry room. You know how to work with an open room.
Right.
Because you've been there.
Yeah.
And so this is still kind of new territory for me, you know.
Oh, it's exciting.
And again, Blake Mills, he just grew up, you know, using pedals and effects and, you know, recording at home. And he's been doing it his whole life.
Yeah.
You know, I, on the other hand, was like, I want a great engineer. I want a great studio.
Yeah.
Put the mics in the right place and make it sound like that right there, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So, again, very new for me.
It's interesting you talk about pedals, because we had some fun when you were last here. You had the Dumble. You were playing your version of that Les Paul, I think. And you had this massive pedal board. Well, I say massive, you know, pretty big pedal board that you'd had custom built for the record, to the previous record.
Yeah, I know the one.
And I think you said you'd never even certainly on the tour, I think, or it may even been the record as well. Like you just never even turn any of the pedals on. Nice.
For recording, no, for sure.
So was that a similar thing? Was it very straight guitar into the amplifier?
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
Actually, no. The one thing that I did do was I would use like a really seriously kind of compressed overdrive for some of those parts, because it keeps it small, right? That compressed overdrive sound, so it's not big, and that was the key to the whole record. Is like you don't want anything to take up a lot of space.
It's funny that the using the words big and small for the guitar sound. I don't want to. We shouldn't underplay. The guitar doesn't sound like weak. Like it's a bit.
No.
It's just. I certainly didn't. I'm trying to think if I probably didn't even occur to me that you might not be using the dumbbell until I don't know, 4 or 5 listens through it, whatever. And I'm just reading the notes that you'd put up on the site about it. I was like, that's interesting. It's a great guitar sound. So
there are several.
Yeah, I mean, have you got a? I mean, I know
all the solos are a 64 SG, by the way.
I was just about to say, have you got like so you've got a go-to guitar to do the solos on?
I wound up having a go-to guitar.
Yeah.
I tried other things, man. I'm putting all this stuff down. I've got these beautiful guitars,
Yeah.
And I have a 64 SG that's been completely chopped. They're not original pickups. It's like, it used to be P90s. Now it's some kind of humbuckers. I don't even know what they are. It's a wraparound,
Oh, cool.
Weird headstock logo. It's like just all chopped up.
So some sort of old Junior, I guess SG Junior of some sort, I guess, if it's got a wraparound and a P90s on it. Maybe.
Well, it initially had, I think, that little trapeze.
The Vibrolo type...
trapeze,
yeah.
The shitty one.
Yeah, the terrible trem system. No, funnily enough, they've just reissued those in all their shitty glory, but I kind of love them for it's just a bent piece of metal, isn't it? That makes, yeah, but it's like authentically cheap.
Authentically cheap. Authentically shitty.
Yeah, exactly. So what's the plan then in terms of touring the album or just, promotion on it? Is that, I guess, the dates in Europe or that? You got to back up
I've kind of done it already.
Right. So in your mind, is there like more tunes or in the brain and you're thinking, okay, looking to the next one now, or are you going to chill out for a bit?
I want to stay in town in Nashville and produce other people. Okay. That's what I want to do.
And is that, have you got your own studio then in the house that you bought there?
No.
Nope. So you're just going to make some contacts, find some places you like to work.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, again, about Nashville, the resources are just endless,
Yeah.
And people are just, I've been so embraced there. It's been amazing, and it's like people, they want to work with you and you want to work with them. You know, it's just that there's a nice fair exchange thing going on there, Everybody treats everybody right.
Who's the one to keep an eye on in terms of talent coming through then that you think that you've
I don't know about that.
Okay. So.
I know a lot of old people. But the guy that I have my own label. I've released 2 records on my own label.
Cool.
It's called 13J.
Mm-hmm.
The first artist was quite a few years ago. I mean, like maybe 4 years ago now. Bjosi Thoroddsen. He's an Icelandic guitarist.
Okay.
He was the first release on my label. And I recently released a record by an artist named Jeff Mackerlane.
Mm-hmm.
He's a guitarist from New York, Brooklyn. He and I have become good friends over the years, and he hadn't really made a record before.
Okay.
He had, but not something that was going to get out there a little bit more. And so, and we went on the road. Basically, I brought him out with me so that we could promote his record and my record label.
Yeah.
So that was good. And what I'm doing in Nashville, the idea is to do Nashville artists. And as I said, it's kind of a melting pot. Nobody's from Nashville. And the guy that I was going to produce, his name is Paul Franklin.
Yeah.
Paul Franklin is probably the best-known steel guitar player.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly in Nashville, he's the king.
Right.
So we agreed to do a record, and I'm like very excited about this, And then he got called by Chris Stapleton to go on tour.
Yeah.
He got called by Vince Gill to go on tour. And there's a third heavyweight very famous person, and he took all three.
So his album's on the back shelf for a little
we
while.
won't get in the studio till December. And so this just kind of became news to me about a week and a half ago. So I'm like, okay, now I got to find somebody else.
What? I mean, you'll have to sort of forgive the question because you might have, but what is it like, do you think, for a guitar player to have someone like you produce their record? Do you think it's...
I don't know.
But I'm trying to sort of think, it's the sort of equivalent of kind of, is it the equivalent of kind of going and get sort of like asking Mike Tyson to teach you how to box a little bit? Or I don't know, is it just like...
Well, I think probably anybody that I would work with, should be fairly confident unto themselves.
Yeah.
They would need to be, so that they could be themselves.
Yes. That's what I mean. It's like,
yes.
So do you find, I suppose you just have to encourage them and let them be their own person and not feel like you're going, I wouldn't do it like that. Well, I suppose you're the producer, so you've kind of got to somehow...
You got to let them be themselves, first of all. And then they have to actually be themselves.
Yeah.
So you do your best to make them comfortable.
Well, that's exciting. I mean, good luck, man, with that. It's
thank you.
It's always lovely to catch up with you and see what's happening. I think I really do think I've seen some of the reviews for Purple House as well. I really think that'll be an album people will be talking about and asking you to play songs from for a long time. So if you've not listened to it, I will put links in the description below. You can go and find out where you can listen to it. It's a super, super album.
You mean buy it?
Well, buy it, obviously. Yes.
It'd be better to buy it, because then I'd actually get paid. Otherwise, no.
Well, and make sure you see Robben at a show or something like that. Come to one of the events that you do, because they're always good fun as well. So, well, look, congratulations again.
You.
Thank you so much for swinging by to Guildford.
Always a pleasure.
And yes, thank you guys, and we shall see you next time.
Thank you.